UN News.
We've talked about this ad nauseum before, but this was 2 years ago, a year ago now, right?
Sure.
So anniversary of October 7th again, right? So we're gonna probably discuss this week and next week. Just go through this again for people so we have all the information at hand, right? Hindsight, as always, is 2020. So we're gonna get into it. So this is from the EI, Jim DeBrosse over at the Intifada, right? And he asked the question, who profited off of October 7th? And you're probably thinking that's a weird thing to ask. How would anyone profit off of that? Well, guess what? As Israel's military invasion, indiscriminate slaughter and forced starvation in Gaza continue. Questions as to how some 3,000 Hamas-led fighters were able to breach Israel's security borders on October 7th remain unanswered. Israel's government continues to reject an independent investigation, and evidence is mounting that the state's top civilian and military leaders didn't just miss the signs of an imminent assault, but may have purposely ignored them. The motive was to justify the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, the annexation of the West Bank, and the creation of a larger Israel and occupied Palestine. In addition, and surprisingly unreported, suspicious stock market activity just days before the October attack leads weight to the theory that someone, somewhere, knew something. Similar to other events involving things. But earlier this month, a Haaretz investigation found that the top Israeli military leader for the Gaza area on the 7th of October had visited the site of the supernova rave just an hour before the attack and took no precautions. Lieutenant Colonel Haim Cohen, commander of the Northern Brigade in the Gaza Division, saw that only a handful of police officers were on duty at the crowded festival, but told military investigators he had no information suggesting that he should have dispersed the crowd or beefed up security. The supernova rave, where 378 people were killed and 44 were taken hostage, was the deadliest single site on a day that saw 1,139 people killed in total and 240 people taken captive. It is still unclear how many of the dead were killed by Palestinian fighters and how many were killed by Israel itself due to its deadly Hannibal directive. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's immediate response to the crisis has also come under scrutiny. His chief of staff and close confidant, Jackie Braverman, is accused of having altered Netanyahu's phone logs to make them appear as if his first orders to his military in the morning of October 7th came earlier than they actually did. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? The Israeli military had its strongest warnings the night before the 7th of October, however, but chose at the highest levels to ignore those warnings. According to reports obtained by Ynet, Israel's largest news website, a military intelligence unit had noted signs of impending rocket fire on Israel and unusual activity at the Hamas aerial force that should have set off alarm bells. Instead, the military opted to avoid exposing sensitive intelligence sources rather than taking measures for preparedness. Really, the protection of a few agents was worth the risk of a major rocket attack on Israeli territory without warning civilians? 10 days after those reports became public knowledge, Netanyahu's office acknowledged that it had failed to pass on the memo detailing suspicious activity the night before the October 7th, but was justified in not doing so because the alert was labeled non-urgent. Israel's leaders seem to have been prepared to expel Palestinians in Gaza, then thwart a possible assault. Just months after the October attack, they were already calling for the voluntary migration of Gaza's 2.3 million residents while negotiating with several countries for their resettlement. Such thoughts were swiftly rejected by Egypt, Jordan, and a raft of other Arab nations, but Israel continues to eye other countries for the forced deportation of Palestinians in Gaza, including Indonesia, Ethiopia, and Libya, with the help of the U.S. administration under Donald Trump. There's a few other countries I think we've covered them wanting to throw people to, right? But even more mind-boggling is that Israeli officials had in their possession a year ahead of time a copy of the 40-page assault plan and watched as Hamas openly trained and prepared for the breakthrough as the New York Times reported in November 2023. Topping off the suspicion that Israel's top leaders willfully ignore the staggering number of warning signs. Netanyahu's office has refused to countenance an inquiry into its own failings on the 7th of October, while allowing an investigation into the military's role and response. Netanyahu remains opposed to an independent state commission inquiry that would look at the full picture of political, civilian, and military involvement. We have investigated ourselves and found we did no wrong, is what I'm betting they want to do. But if detailed plans and even public video recordings of Hamas training exercises weren't enough, Israel's fiscal sleuths also failed to notice another red flag, a sudden spike in trades in the days before the 7th of October, betting that the values of key Israeli stocks would soon plummet. The most likely reason for the bet was that the investors knew war would soon break out and stress the Israeli economy. The suspicious timing of the stock market activity was revealed in a 67-page study first reported in the U.S. by CNN. The authors of the study found that unidentified investors in Israel and the U.S. had sold their stocks in key Israeli companies just day before the Hamas attack in a practice known as short selling. The investors later repurchased their stocks at a much lower price, reaping millions of dollars of profit. The study, titled Trading on Terror, was written by former Securities and Exchange Commission head Robert Jackson Jr., now a professor at New York University, and Columbia Law professor Joshua Mitz, an expert in monitoring short-selling activity on stock markets. Our findings suggest that traders informed about the coming attacks profited from these tragic events, the authors wrote, adding, days before the attack, traders appeared to anticipate the events to come. The study found that on the 2nd of October, nearly 100% of the off-exchange trading volume in the Israeli equity market consisted of short selling. Neither author of the report or the university media relations offices at Columbia replied to requests for interviews. I wonder why. In CNN's 4th of December 2023 story, Jonathan Macy, a professor at Yale Law School, told the news channel the findings were, quote, shocking. The evidence that informed traders profited by anticipating the terrorist attack of October 7th is strong, Macy said. Regulators appear to lack the ability to discover the entities responsible for this trading, which is unfortunate. A story the same day in Haaretz speculated that it was Hamas-linked investors who had pulled their money, not Israelis or pro-Israelis, even though the authors of the paper said they couldn't identify the investors. If the short sellers did not have connections to Hamas, however, it's like the Israelis would have known. Since at least 2015, the New York Times reported Israeli intelligence has been tracking the financing that supports Hamas and looking the other way. Critics believe the strategy of Israel's leaders were that by propping up Hamas leadership in Gaza against the PA, limited control over parts of the occupied West Bank, the two factions would continue to divide the people and head off a unified Palestinian state. U.S. regulators at the Securities and Exchange Commission and on Wall Street told CNN their policy is neither to confirm nor deny any investigation. That was 19 months ago. Israeli regulators promised to investigate the unusual activity, but just a day later said they found no proof of short selling. Officials at the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange criticized the Trading on Terror report as an inaccurate and irresponsible and pointed out that currency miscalculations by the authors inflated the potential short sale profits from about 9.5 million to just under 1 billion. Regardless of the miscalculations, the authors of the report told Institutional Investor they stood by the gist of their report. Yaniv Pagat, head of trading for the Tel Aviv Exchange, told Reuters it was unlikely that investors linked to Hamas could have breached the exchange security regulations against money laundering or something like that. Perhaps then, the short sale was the work of Israeli or pro-Israeli investors who had been tipped off by Israel's intelligence officials or political leaders, or perhaps two Israeli officials who knew of the impending attack were themselves the short sellers. Given that Israel has so far systemically eliminated 5 senior Hamas military leaders, 11 members of political bureaus, and attempted to assassinate more in a military strike on U.S. ally Qatar this month, finding out who profited from October 7th would seem to be a high priority for Israel's leaders. Or, judging by the Israeli government's reluctance to investigate its own role, maybe not. Thoughts, Care Bear? Because I've got some.
Why don't you share your bit?
Well, I remember when October 7th happened, right? And I remember thinking, how do they not know? They surveil the entire fucking landmass, right? And I was told by colleagues who are generally very intelligent, practiced, and like respected in the space, right? That like, no. See, Israel's army is a paper tiger, and they totally could have let this happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it might be a little of column A, little of column B. Where like somebody knew some shit was up. Like, but I think they just kind of like thought it would be nothing, that they could deal. But I think the other side to that coin is they knew what could happen, and they wanted it to happen to be an excuse, which was my thought at the time. So, you know, I think it's probably gray. It's somewhere in the middle, but seeing how Israel operates now, you know, like, hard for me to think otherwise, you know? So,
right.
but
I am kind of wondering, given that October 7th is next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
At the time of this recording. Like, the propaganda that's going to be spewed. And like, because I've already seen like on buses, I've actually seen them since the summer, I believe, if not even like early in the spring. Like some documentary or something in relation, like a concert or something, like
right.
They're pushing.
Yeah, they're gonna do that.
October 7th. Like, I've already seen that propaganda since for the last few, not on buses, like billboards or whatever. So, but I just wonder, like, again, yeah, they could put out all the propaganda they want, but are people really going to go for it? I don't think so. Like, I think especially now, 2 years in, I think people have seen enough carnage online that they're not going to really go for it. So my thing is, what is this for? Like, is this really for the masses, or is this really for
everybody else?
I guess, but like, is it just to kind of keep up the like, it'd be one thing to spend the money to try and convince people, but it's like, what are you trying to do now? Just keep up the lie among yourselves and spend the money among yourselves? Like, in order to keep up the pretense that it's all about Israel and what happened in terms of Hamas? Like, I don't exactly get that to me. Like, because the idea of propaganda is to spread it to the masses, not to just kind of keep yourselves in your bubbles, if that makes sense.
Well, it definitely leads me into my closing bit of this segment. So I brought a bit of Caitlin Johnstone. We haven't done that in a while. And she just said, expect a huge fuss about this October 7th anniversary. There's going to be a lot of nonsense like involved with it. So I'll let Tim Foley read her words. And which, by the way, Tim Foley, do you realize how ironic it is with your last name being Foley that you do voiceover work? Or is that just me and my brain? You know, that Foley work is a thing. But anyway, here you go.
Expect a huge fuss about the October 7th anniversary as the world turns against Israel.
No! I clicked one more time. Hold on. I fix it.
Expect a huge fuss about the October 7th anniversary as the world turns against Israel. Israel apologists are probably going to make a much, much bigger deal about the second October 7th anniversary than they did about the first anniversary, because they kinda have to. The world is turning against Israel in unprecedented ways in 2025, and yelling about October 7th is all they've got left. They've already got a scripted October 7th series coming out on Paramount Plus, and another separate scripted October 7th series coming out on HBO Max for the anniversary. There are probably numerous news media segments and articles scheduled, maybe some new quote-unquote revelations about alleged October 7th atrocities, which have just been waiting in the wings this whole time for some reason. The hospirists are going to be so obnoxious. They'll be babbling about Hamas beheading babies and then cooking the beheaded babies in the oven and then having sex with the beheaded babies and then eating the beheaded babies and then playing soccer with the baby heads while singing about how much they love Adolf Hitler. They'll need to do this because what else do they have? All the attention has long ago moved from October 7th to the genocide in Gaza because Israel is the victimizer in literally every news story that's come out about Palestine since that one day. Every relevant humanitarian institution on earth is saying that Israel is committing genocide and starving civilians, and we've been watching the evidence of this on our screens for 2 years. In 2023, you had Westerners going, "How could Hamas do such a thing?" But in 2025, everyone's looking back and going, I kind of get it. There are only so many horrific atrocities you can witness before you stop seeing Israel as the poor little Bambi-eyed victim. There are only so many times you can hear Israeli officials stating their plans to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip of all Palestinians. Only so many Israeli soldiers you can see mockingly dressed in the undergarments of the dead and displaced Palestinian women they've been genociding. Only so many hospital bombings you can read about. Only so many accounts of IDF troops massacring starving civilians at aid sites you can listen to before you start thinking to yourself that Israel probably had it coming. So they've got to try to reignite that initial shock and horror Israel's Western allies experienced on October 7th, using whatever tools of emotional manipulation they can. Try to take us all by the hand and lead us back to that naive time when the mainstream narrative was that Israel had just been attacked by a bunch of hateful savages who wanted to murder Jews simply because they are Jewish. It won't work, though. We've seen too much. What has been seen cannot be unseen. No matter how much they moan about October 7th, no matter how much control they shore up over TikTok and other social media platforms to silence criticism of Israel, no matter how loudly they concern troll about a pretend epidemic of anti-Semitism, what has been seen will never be unseen. We see what Israel is. We see what Israel is doing. We see what the Western governments who support Israel are. There is nothing anyone can say or do that will cause us to unsee what we have seen and unknow what we know. And we will never, ever forgive them.
Can you?
Expect a huge fuss.
I was saying
about the
Caitlin's
October
probably
7th
already demonetized, right? I can't imagine they've let her. They've let her keep her stuff up. So, I mean, talking about what we talk about certainly got us demonetized on YouTube. So you can scan that QR code on your screen or go to codashv.com/Indie News Network and leave us a few dollary dues. Help us continue to put these voices out. But otherwise, like, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the share button. Send this to like-minded friends. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Otherwise, thanks for watching.